the city council, which is not correct. It says something that is actually a misstatement of 824. Now, having it in the charter is, I guess, fine, because state statute will override what the charter says in that particular instance, because statute gives the city its powers, and the city can't contravene them. But this section gives the sort of basically parrots the language of 824 and says that, I think that all the language is in there. Any of the activities defined in 824 until it's referred to the commission and the commission is voted. It also says that you can override us in accordance with section 824. Now, that's only happened once while I've been on the commission since 2013 or so. And that was with the stadium, where we said that the stadium was inconsistent with the city plan, sent it back to the council. The council at that time overrode us with a 6-2 or 6-3 vote. And then we proceeded, based on the city council's overriding, to actually amend our zoning regulations in deference to the city council as the sort of embodiment of public will. So it's that kind of back and forth that's set up by state law, and this just really parrots what's in state law. And I don't know if you had any more specific questions about that, but we have 35 days after you refer something to us. If we don't say anything, then it's automatically approved and you can go ahead.
Thank you for the explanation. No, I'm quite satisfied.
The most recent 824 we did, and you may not have been aware that it came to us, was the 824 for the Albany and Woodland parcel. So you're presuming to place it under a development agreement with the Freeman Companies entity, and it came to us, and of course we said unanimously, as we almost always do, this is consistent with the city plan, and just pass it on. 824s are very light reviews. They're not site plan or zoning reviews.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing no more questions, I'm going to put a motion on the floor to accept the proposed ordinance and favorably recommend it going back to council, the body, for approval.
Second that.
Any questions, concerns, statements? Can I call a roll call? John?
Yes.
Councilman Rossetti?
Yes.
Council President Rosado? Council President Rosado?
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilman Bermudez?
Yes.
Councilman Mitchum?
He can't get back on for some reason. He sent an email.
If he sends me an email, I will send him my sign on.
Then yeah, about a password when he signed out.
Okay, all right. Well, the item is passed.
Okay.
Councilwoman Surgeon, may I say one more thing before I sign off?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to let you guys know that just today it was announced that the City of Hartford Zoning Code won the Best Zoning Code in the Country award. It's the nerdiest award on the entire planet. But it was from Smart Growth America.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Yes. It was from Smart Growth America and the Form-Based Codes Institute. And it's a big deal because most of the places that win these awards are frankly wealthy white communities, and the fact that this was a community-wide rezoning and then it showed dividends like Bulls Park, like Parkville Market, like Westbrook Village, on the large scale and on the small scale, was compelling to them. So pat yourselves on the back, because you've appointed every single member to the Planning and Zoning Commission who has really tried to carry sustainable and equitable development forward. And so I thank you and for your participation, and just wanted to let you know that we have something to be proud of here.
Well, on these uncertain times we're having, it's great to have some good news.
Yes.
It really is great. So thank you, Professor Attorney, the PDZ Zone Commission. Thank you so very much for all your assistance.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your meeting.
Great. If you guys will give me a pause for 1 second, I'm going to try to get Councilman Mitchum on.
Sure.
He's now on the phone. He's on the phone.
I'm here. I had a WebEx.
I'm having a WebEx problem. I'm here on the phone.
You're on the phone? Okay, great. Good timing, Josh, good timing. All right. So, item number 3 is a resolution introduced by Councilman Mitchum and Councilman Bermudez calling on the governor and the legislator of the state of Connecticut to enact executive order and/or legislation provision to protect the ability of all Hartford residents to remain in their homes. The item was introduced on the council meeting of May 26th. Councilman Mitchell or Councilman Bermudez, would you like to comment on this item?
Well, I know you all have it in your hands, and it's there for the reading. So I don't want to say too much. I'd rather leave it to your questions. But the idea is really to, obviously, like we don't, as council, we don't have the power to do what's in this. So we're really just calling on the legislature and the governor to take steps to protect people paying mortgages, people paying rent, to make sure that the burden of this, the economic burden of this pandemic is sensibly and fairly distributed, but I would really leave it open to questions.
Any questions? Hello?
This is Councilman Bermudez. I wanted to add that we've also gotten the confirmed support of several state elected officials from the Hartford delegation. And I think I said it before, but in one of our other meetings, but one of the more important ones being the chair of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, Representative Brandon McGee, along with the support of others in other towns as well, Senator Matt Lesser being another one. But, we feel that this is very timely. We are already, and all of us are receiving these calls and emails from constituents just being super worried about what's going to happen, renters and homeowners alike, what's going to happen come July 1st, given that the current governor's executive order 7X, we don't know what's going to happen after July 1st. And so there are a lot of people who will not be able to pay either their mortgages because they don't have a federally backed loan, and or renters who've lost a lot of wages. And so there's a lot there. There's a lot to work with. And echoing Councilman Josh Mictum, we recognize that it is ultimately a state decision, but definitely want to send a strong, amplified voice in solidarity saying that we care about this because this is an issue that our residents will be faced with. And overall, at the greater, not just Hartford, but the entire state. So.
Any questions? Council President Rosado.
Yes, originally when this resolution was put forward, I was one of the ones who agreed to send it over to committee for discussion, but I have been in lots of conversations with some state representatives from the Hartford legislation and from the state. And I am going to be in favor of this resolution going back to council with a federal recommendation, urging the state also. I know that we had previous talks about waiting for the housing task force to come back with recommendations, but I feel strongly that we should move this forward to council due to the fact that at the end of the day, the state will eventually mandate what it is moving forward that we're going to do. So in favor of this resolution.
Okay, I've got some concerns regarding the resolution. The whereas I totally agree with. The first resolve regarding canceling rent owing for the full period of the pandemic, for the follow, until renters return to work and paying other accumulated debts. One of the things the Housing Committee had recommending is using some of the HUD funds, COBAC HUD funds we're going to be getting to help with tenant rental assistance. So I just had a problem with canceling it all or are applying, maybe, help by saying, using some of the rental assistance for HUD funds for that. Josh or Wildelise, would you accept a friendly amendment to that resolve clause?
Well, Shirley, let me respond before we get to the question of a friendly amendment, because the idea here is that there has to be state cash assistance, right? Like, we know that there's just missing money because people aren't working, and it doesn't make sense to make the tenants pay it, and of course it doesn't make sense to leave the landlords holding the bag. And the idea is simply, instead of making each tenant apply, have the landlord apply, because we're also asking that all landlords get forbearance so that they're not going to get foreclosed on. So the idea is there is going to be assistance, but it's just more effective if it goes through the landlords than through the tenants. I don't know if that addresses your concern. Just the idea that people who are tenants are more likely to have fewer resources and less ability and bandwidth to be applying for that kind of assistance. You follow what I'm saying?
So the resolve clause says canceling, rent owing for a full period. So basically, you want to add in there about, if the landlords get approval or assistance.
Well, if you look at I think I'm looking now. Is it the third?
The first resolve.
The third resolve. Well, no, but what I'm saying is the third resolve addresses that by providing funds to homeowners and landlords who can show that they're unable to access other forms of mortgage relief, or that notwithstanding that they would be at risk of foreclosure. So I think in that sense, I think it sort of addresses it just from the other side. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do see that, but I didn't tie both of them in together. I didn't tie me on camera. I didn't tie both the first resolve and the second resolve in together at all. For me, I read them as two separate resolves.
It's just one resolve.
Well, I mean, it's
the first bullet item.
right. I think the idea is that they should all work together.
Okay.
Let me, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So listening to this conversation, and certainly I also, I also fully support all the whereas clauses. I'm a little concerned about the strength of the resolved clauses due to the potential legality of some of these things. But notwithstanding that, there's one assumption here that is not necessarily true, which is that all landlords have mortgages. And so the proponents of the resolution are setting this up so that everybody seemingly benefits. Tenants benefit, landlords benefit, and nobody gets hurt. But there actually are probably a number of landlords in Hartford who don't have mortgages and who rely on rental income as their income. And I'm thinking of a lot of elderly people that own 2- and 3-family houses, and that's their source of income. So what I'm wondering is if the proponents would consider in that very first resolve clause where it says cancel rent, just simply add after those words, say and/or provide rental assistance for the full period of the declared health emergency. And, without specifying, just make that a general statement so that it's clear that what we're saying to the legislature is, try to protect everybody in some form or another. And it would I would feel a little bit more comfortable if we were able to word that. So again, the language I'm suggesting to the proponents is to add and/or provide rental assistance in between the words owing and for the full period.
I'm not against that, John. Can I just respond? Because I think as I'm hearing you all talk about it, I might suggest maybe an amendment that's actually more comprehensive to the third bullet point. And I say this because maybe it does the work that you're talking about and maybe does a little more. If you see where it says provide cash assistance using federal and state funds to homeowners and landlords who own fewer than 6 units who can show that they are unable to access other forms of mortgage relief, or who can show, I would say change the or to and who can show that notwithstanding access to other forms of strike mortgage, just other forms of relief, they are at risk of foreclosure or serious economic hardship.
Could live with that.
I think you're right. I mean, adding the serious economic hardship takes
Yes.
care of the foreclosure, because for some, it may not be the risk of foreclosure, but it may be a risk of serious economic hardship. So,
And I think that actually is more comprehensive.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm good with that.
me too.
Okay.
All right. Anybody want to put a motion on the floor?
I have a question. Am I allowed to ask a question, Councilwoman Surgeon?
Oh, sure. You're welcome. Thank you very much, Councilman. Sure, please.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the proponents of this resolution, does this also extend itself to small business owners who are paying rent?
I'm double checking. My intention was not to write it for that. I know that's a big issue, and it's one that we've talked about. My intention, and I'm seeing if I was careless enough that I accidentally applied it to that, but my intention was only to apply it to residential. And I think it says, because it says residents to remain in their homes, I think that it's meant only to apply to residential rentals. I think that that is a worthy thing to address, but it was not the intention of this resolution.
So again, I'm not on the committee, but I think, if we're putting a favorable recommendation, being small business what it is and the economic impact that COVID has had on small businesses, particularly the businesses that are living on the margins, would it make sense to everyone here on the committee to also add language to the small business owners? I think they would be relatively in the same space as residential in terms of rights and properties. I'm not sure. I'm not the legal expert. I'm not the committee here. But if we're making a recommendation, to include those folks that are, in our communities that are struggling, that's just a suggestion, if possible.
My only sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to add, so one of the things that we've seen when the governor issued the executive orders for renters and homeowners is that the business community was handled separately. So that I'm just throwing that out there as a thing to consider.
I would just say the only concern I have, I think I support the spirit of that suggestion, is that we would have to really define what is a small business owner, what is a small business. I think we could do that, but I think that's more work than we can do with a friendly amendment on the fly. Like, that might need a little more definition so that we're making sure to help the folks we want to help and not set up something where, like what we saw with the federal government, where a bunch of big companies were able to get those small business aids because we're not careful with our drafting. So I think we should take it up, but I don't know that we can do it here.
I'd like to make a motion for that friendly amendment to what Nate just shared for small businesses, but limit the small businesses to small businesses with 8 employees or less. Because with this, with the grant that Hartford's been giving out with the assistance from SAMA and the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, what I've noticed is that businesses are allowed to apply, those with 500 employees or less, and that's what they consider small business, where I don't. And I see a lot of very small mom and pop businesses that are suffering and are not able to receive some of these funds. So I would like to make a motion to do a friendly amendment for small business for the same reason of protection, because they do pay rent and leases and they are behind 3 to 4 months. And the landlords are also involved with that, but apply it to small businesses with 8 employees or less, or it could be 5 employees or less, because we have plenty of small businesses of that size.
The proponents of the
I think that I mean, I share your sentiments and for the small business owners, but I think they're in a different category where, they've been able to get loans from HEDCO, SAMA. The one that the city has, the grant now is up to 1.5 million, whereas this resolution was catered to homeowners and renters. I think if we expand it and we bring in the small business, it kind of takes away of the focus for the small for a rental. I don't know if we could do a separate resolution addressing that.
I agree. I think we should do a separate resolution.
It's
One
just,
at a time, ladies and gentlemen, councilperson, one at a time, please. Council President, did you finish?
yes, go ahead.
Okay, so, yes?
Can I talk when you have a minute? It's Marilyn.
Let's go ahead, Councilwoman.
I think two points. I think we could mirror this one tailored to small businesses, but Jimmy, my concern of limiting it to employees, you can have a very high budget if you just, I think we have to look at small businesses comprehensively. The number of employees doesn't necessarily mean the access to income. I know what you're saying, but.
Okay, so basically, is to ask the council people who had written this resolution, will they accept that friendly amendment?
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, the friendly amendment hasn't been seconded yet.
Exactly.
And
Sorry.
I would just like to comment and raise this possibility for Councilman Mictum. I think he made an excellent point, and I think his point is demonstrated by the conversation that we're having, which is drafting something for small business is not as easy as just saying a couple of words, and all of a sudden we've got a resolution that mirrors this resolution. You do need to put a little thought into it. At the same time, I think it behooves us as a council to make sure that we are addressing our small business community. And I think that's an excellent point raised by Councilman LeBron, and thank you for bringing it up. You know, we've got a big city and we've got a lot of constituents, and our small business community is certainly a big part of our constituency. And they are, many of them, despite the PPP and despite the city's program, we don't know how long this is going to go on, how these restaurants are going to bounce back, you know, whether they're going to be able to make rent payments. So what I'm wondering is if we could impose on Councilman Mictum to agree to draft a second resolution for us that would address the small business and put his great pen to hand, because he's done such a fine job of drafting this first one.
You know what? Never do a good job, Josh. Never do a good job, Josh.
I love that idea, but the only problem is that I will definitely need some assistance from folks who know more about businesses and their operators.
We'll be happy to assist, Josh.
Then let's put heads together and do it forthwith, because I support the concept. I think we're mostly on the same page. I don't think we can do it neatly with an amendment.
Right, so can I ask the councilman to withdraw his friendly amendment?
So can I just add to that? I just want to add to the conversation, Councilwoman Surgeon.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I already have something already kind of drafted already. So so that way it can be a light lift for everyone. So I can send that out to folks tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, would you withdraw your friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion
So moved.
that we send this back with the amendment. We're sending this back favorably with the amendment that Josh provided to us, and he'll give us the written language for it.
Yes.
Anybody seconding that?
I did.
Okay, great. Marilyn seconded. Let me call the roll. John Gale,
Yes.
Josh Mitchum,
Yes.
Mitchum, Councilman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Council President Rosado,
Yes.
and Shirley Surgeon, yes. So we are favorably sending this resolution with the changes that Councilman Gale put in to the second whereas area. Josh, Councilman Mitchum?
Third resolution. Third.
Third resolution. And would you send that out, so with the changes?
Yes. I am in fact typing it right now, so I don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry? Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so we have one last item on our agenda, and that is a presentation from Hartford Azides, and I'm going to unmute them. Come on, why can't I unmute everybody? Azides, can you unmute? Frank?
Frank's going to run the presentation and I'm pretty much going to chat with you folks.
Oh, okay, Christina.
Others may
Okay,
jump
I'll
in.
share my screen now, if that's okay.
great. Hartford Azides, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. And I thank all of you so much tonight for taking some time and popping us on the schedule so that we can just come in and let you know who we are, bring you up to speed on where we've been, what we've been doing, and what we're looking to do in the future and what we have coming up and how you folks can come and join us and support us in that. So my name is Christina Renciogai. Currently, I serve as the president on the board of Hartford Azides. And thank you, Frank. And this evening, I just want to give you a quick update, answer any questions that you might have, just explain the budget that we submitted, asking you to earmark some funds from the capital improvement budget so that our friends and neighbors in the city can have an opportunity to just, say how and what they would like to see improved within the city with those funds. And in a few short weeks, we actually have 8 or 9 projects that are going to be up for vote. I'm hoping that you folks will check those out and support those and vote. We can do the next slide, please, Frank. Great, thank you. So Hartford Azides is a name that we have named ourselves, but we're actually part of a greater democratic process, which is called participatory budgeting. And PB was originally started back in Brazil, back in 1989, spread through Europe, South America, and then finally made its way here to the US. It's not very widespread as of yet, but it's down in New York City, in Chicago, San Francisco, San Juan, and there are greater than 1,500 other municipalities and organizations that have chosen to use PB in some form or fashion. And the idea behind PB is that it gives people real power over real money. And in just a minute or two, we have a video that we're going to share with you down in New York City. And it's just going to show how folks from all walks of life and all backgrounds are able to come together and just share challenges and ideas and things that concern them within the city. And we can take these things and bring them together and kind of use them as fuel and inspiration to spark some great projects that hopefully can address a lot of these things. Let's check out this video.
Are there people here?
Christina, I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, I keep hoping that it might be internet connection because I know we had tested it and it worked rather well last time.
I can't hear anything at all.
I believe she's working on trying to fix the volume.
I'm sorry, you can't hear it at all?
No.
Got my,
Frank, I might have one suggestion that might help. If under the shared content, there's a drop down that says the default is optimized for text and images. If you click that down, I think there's an option for optimize for video, and that might help allow the audio to work.
Share my video? No. Where is it? Under?
Do you have the circular button, share content? I think it's what you use to show your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, I don't see it. I'm looking on my. When we tested this the other day, it worked.
Yeah. Is it the share tab right there? That's like 3 over from the WebEx meetings on the upper leftish?
I'm gonna.
Okay.
Oh, I think that's yeah. I think that is the first step, is to unshare, and then there should be a button.
Stop sharing.
To share content.
I've got one button that says share content.
Good. And then click that.
Optimized for motion video. Got it.
Oh, nice. Jared, you're so good.
It took me a while to figure it out.
I'm willing to listen again.
Awesome.
Right, if you live in this community and you pay taxes, come out and vote, decide how your tax dollars get spent.
Participatory budgeting gives people real power over real money to make the decisions that affect their lives. It's a democratic process in which ordinary community members directly decide how to spend part of the public budget.
Well, this is different because you're actually voting for where the money is going to be spent instead of allowing them.
Oh,
What happened, Frank?
we just lost you.
Gone?
The film broke.
Listen, we're all getting used to this new technology.
The tape popped.
Oh my goodness.
Richard, you can tell us all about Hartford Azides. Richard, can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, Christina, do you want to try to just pick it up without the video, or?
Yeah, let's go for it. So the idea behind Hartford Azides, and I think you had seen a really great photo, which is probably one of the third things that I love about that video, is how it goes through the ideas. And once you sit down with those ideas, they go into action teams. And quite honestly, that's actually kind of how I found Hartford Azides. They didn't actually just pull me off the street and go, hey, serve as our president on the board, will you? I spent many hours sitting around a table with my action team from folks all across the city. And we worked through these ideas about, how are they going to impact the city? Are they going to touch as many people as possible? Are they going to improve, the quality of life for as many people as possible? What's going to do the most good? And what's viable within the rules and regulations that we have to use for capital funds to be spent. And it was just awesome sitting and working with those folks and bringing these projects to light, which, in a couple of weeks, you'll see the work of this next rounds where they end up going to vote. And in our current, situation, we really changed what that looks like. Typically, we get to go out and just send out flyers and emails and just put things all over the city to let folks know, hey, this is when you should vote, this is what you have to vote on, and this is how you should do it. But we've had to kind of whittle that down, and we've popped it onto our website. And we're hoping to just spread that URL as far and wide as we can so that folks can vote, so they can see what the projects are, kind of read the descriptors on those, and then cast their votes accordingly. And once that is completed by the end of June, we'll let folks know what the top winners are. And then you move into the implementation phase. And that's when we get to go and work with city officials, whether it be DPW or whoever it is, to bring these projects to fruition. So Hartford Azides itself started back in 2015. And we're actually the first participatory budgeting initiative here in Connecticut. And as you know, for our very first year,
Can
we
you
had
hear
about
me?
$1 million. Ooh, someone's there talking to me. Who's that? Ooh.
Can you hear me, Christina?
Yes, Frank.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. That was really, really weird.
Yep.
Where were you in the presentation? I can now hear you.
I'm at history and process.
History and process?
Yes, please.
Can you see it?
No.
Okay, hold on. Let me try to share it
Okay.
again.
Yeah, there we are. Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
I'm so sorry. What a weird thing.
All right. All right. Okay, so first year we had about $1 million. And then the amount that we've had to bring projects to life has varied over the years. This particular year, we have $50,000, and we have 8 or 9 projects that are becoming to vote starting about the middle of the month. Folks that can vote on these, they're all Hartford residents. It can be 13 years of age or older. And the money that is used for these projects is solely spent on funding these projects. It doesn't do anything else. And the funds that are being used are capital improvement funds that are already already a line item in the budget. We aren't competing with other folks that need much needed dollars to do their thing. We aren't raising any costs to the budget. We're just asking that as you set forth the different things within the budget, that you would earmark capital improvement funds so that our friends and neighbors and the residents of Hartford can have a say in the various different things that are going to be improved within their city. Who we are. Perfect. So as you can see, all of us were a bunch of volunteers, and we serve on the board, and we just kind of act to kind of steer and guide and stay within principles and such to see these projects to fruition, to help bring folks together within these meetings, whether it be brainstorming or getting the word out there or encouraging folks to join us or doing action teams and doing the voting. I know until this year, we would be out at various different locations for at least a week, week and a half, just having folks vote. And we would also have we call it like a project fair. We do trifold boards, and folks would be able to talk to people about the projects that they've brought together. It's really a lot of fun, and this year it looks different, but the projects that are coming up are still absolutely amazing. And then the other point to keep in mind is that any of the funds that we use to pay for a couple of part-time staff folks and to pay for the supplies and such, those come from grants and such that we have raised. They do not come from the capital improvement funds. They come from a separate operating budget that are funds we've raised or grants that we have obtained to take care of those things. What you're looking at now are 7 principles that we've used from day one just to kind of guide how Hartford Azides is going to work. We use these at every meeting, every get-together, and all the activities that we do inside of Hartford Azides. The first one is transparency, collaboration. Folks from all across the city come together and work with us. It's really amazing. Empowerment, giving folks a voice, letting them say, hey, this is the thing that I'd like to see improved within my city. Civic engagement, unity, equity and inclusiveness, and deliberation. Do the next slide, please, Frank. And the pictures you see here are from various different meetings over the past years, whether it be a brainstorming session or action team forum. We've also worked with some of the high school students over the past couple years, and some of the winning projects have actually come from high school students. So it's great to have them participate, share their ideas, present their projects, and just share the different ideas that they have and things that they see that maybe we may not even think of within the city. Next slide, please, Frank. And these are the results of some of the winning projects. The upper left there is when we planted the last tree at the schools, when we did the Keep Kids Cool project. Then we have a couple photos of some of the murals. They're going up all across the city. The laptops there, that particular year, we had a little bit of funding left, and the laptop project was next, and it wasn't able to be fully funded, but the project lead was able to kind of whittle it down and make it happen. So we were able to get some computers over at the Albany branch and another library branch, so students can come in and utilize tools that maybe they don't necessarily have available to them at home. And then the bottom corner there, we've done a couple projects that we're able to work with Knox and create new gardens so that folks have an opportunity to come together and garden and grow food and flowers and things of that nature. Next slide, please, Frank. So year 4, these are the projects that we are going to have on ballot very shortly. Hartford Cycles, we have a group that put together kind of a toolkit, and they're going to be, well, if they're voted on and they win, they're going to be placed at all of the Hartford high schools so that kids can bring their bikes in and work on them. We've had a couple of proposals put forward so that basketball courts, one in Lozado Park and one in Pope Park, can be resurfaced so that they can play on them. Urban Thinkscapes, awesome project. I'd encourage you, when it's available on the ballot, to go take a look. My explanation of it, I don't think is going to do it justice, but it's really a great, well thought out project, and I would be excited to see that brought to life. Bushnell Park, this is one of the projects that our high school students brought forward. They go out, they use the ice skating rinks, and they found some improvements that they'd love to see brought to life. Kinney Park, also one of their ideas. They'd love to see a fitness trail placed within the park. And then U Media, also a project they've brought to the ballot. The U Media is down in the library. I guess there's a branch also at the Albany, and they'd like to see some more enhancements done to improve that aspect of U Media at the Albany branch. And then the Wintergreen Garden Restoration. Knox has community gardens all across the city, and we're able to work with this wonderful group of librarian women who, they want a garden. So we partnered them up with Knox, and they worked with Kyle, and they found a site that just needs some love. It kind of got lost, and it's overgrown, and it looks terrible. But if it wins, we are going to get it spruced up and in order, and these women and folks from the community are going to be able to come together and grow things again. Next slide, please, Frank. So the online voting is going to begin on June 15th. It ends June 26th. It's going to be on our website at hartfordasides.org. And we'd certainly love for you to come and vote, support our neighbors, support our friends, and vote on the things that you think are really going to have a great impact on this city. So we thank you very much for the past support that we've had in past years. I know there are years that if City Council hadn't come and spoken up for us, we wouldn't have had funds to improve the city with. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for your time this evening. And I hope that you'll consider earmarking some money for us so that we can continue to bring these projects to life within the city.
Thank you, Christina. Any questions to the chair? Please let me know.
Yes, Councilwoman Surgeon, is Nick LeBron.
Yes.
Yes. So a couple things. So the first thing is I want to just state that I was heavily involved in the murals and personally involved with Jackie McLean on the old Fox Middle building on the corner of Albany and Blue Hill. So I was very proud to be a part of that Hartford Aside. I don't know what year that was, but with that being said, and I know I talked to some folks, Richard, previously. I know that in implementation of projects, sometimes there were some what we would call bureaucratic red tape and obstacles. If you could tee up, I'm trying to tee up for you so that way you can explain how you, in this 4th or 5th year that you guys are in, have overcome those obstacles and actually baked in that into the project designs.
Well, definitely something that we learned from year one is that we bring forth these really awesome projects and they're voted on, and then we need to deliver. But you got to bring the city in. There are folks that we're going to be working with that are going to need to do that work. There are also other folks within the city that there were some projects that almost came to fruition, and there was something that the city was already working on. So we do actually go out and, we touch base with DPW and other parts of the city to see, is it viable? Can it happen? Is there something else coming up that, may impede this, or may there be a conflict? And, if this comes to light, are you really going to be able to make this happen? I believe that in doing that, getting buy-in at the beginning instead of springing it on them once it wins, I think helped. And Richard, if I've missed anything.
No, I think you said it very well. We've gotten much better at this. And I think this year we've done probably the best job we've ever done at communicating. And as Christina says, talking with the people who would be involved with implementing a project so that they're not surprised. We don't come to them and say, hey, this project won. Now it's time to implement. And they say, well, gee, why didn't you talk with us before? So now we're a lot better at talking in advance.
Councilwoman Surgeon, can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. Thank you. And I expressed this to Richard, and first of all, thank you. I had watched the video, and it really is enjoyable to see it again. And, personally, I get to enjoy one of the murals over near where I work, so I appreciate that, but not on my building, but that's okay. What my real concern, and I know there's probably no way to do it around this time, but I expressed this to Richard, because we'd only be able to have online voting this time, is there any other way to access some type of, because if people don't have access to, or direct them to where they could online vote? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I believe that we want to try to reach out to as many organizations that are still kind of functioning and chatting and working with people. I know that we do have a list going. I believe that there are a lot of churches on there as well, because I believe that they are still working and talking with their folks. And I mean, that list is ever evolving. And it is something that we struggled with as well. I mean, it's different having to go online. I know there are folks that just don't have access. And within the current state and doing our best to honor the guidelines, I don't know that we can have polling sites. So that frustrates me, but it's definitely something we're struggling with, and we're doing our best to work around it this time.
This is Frank. I would just mention that the voting will be able to be done from our website, which is optimized for both mobile and for desktop computers. We have a Facebook page where it's going to be popularized. We've created a QR code which can be circulated, so people simply have to take a picture of it to get launched directly to the website. And we're going to leverage every online and offline, community resource we can think of in order to make sure that the most people possible are aware of this. The voting will be very simple and straightforward. We've definitely tried to think through the possible difficulties that people will have in an online expo and voting arena.
Any other questions?
Surgeon?
Councilman Sanchez, go ahead, sir.
Yes. So correct me if I'm wrong. A couple of years back, the voting was at the atrium in City Hall, correct? Where we used the colored dots.
Yes, I think we had done City Hall for one or 2 years. Yes.
Okay, so and I understand there's going to be some difficulty getting online to vote on something like this. Would it be helpful if we could find a venue, open venue, let's say Pratt Street? Pratt Street can be closed down, and you can still set up the stands with all the ideas, and still perform the voting with the colored dots, or whichever way you're planning to do this year. Because I would like to suggest contacting State Representative Julio Concepcion, which I'm sure he can make that happen. And by the way, the limitation has changed from 5 to 10 indoors as far as gatherings, and 25 outdoors. But being that it's Park Street, you have a lot more room, And I think that would be beneficial too for, for this program.
We'd be game. Yeah, that would be great.
So do you have State Representative Concepcion's number or?
If I may jump in, Representative Concepcion, actually, when he was on city council, was the first supporter of Hartford Decides, so he's very familiar with Hartford Decides, and we do know how to contact him. So, but thank you so much. Appreciate that.
I strongly suggest you do. I think that it would be helpful, and I think it would be successful, and that way it's more convenient for everyone. And hopefully it'll be a beautiful day too, sunny and all.
Can you arrange that?
Would be nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is well, I have some questions. Can you
Councilor
please give
Liberty,
us,
go ahead.
thank you. Can you provide us with a summary of what the urban thinkscapes is? I know you said it's difficult to summarize, but if you can just inform us what that is.
I'm gonna let Frank speak to that because I know that he worked on that, and there are a lot of pieces that I think I would leave out. It looks, the pictures are just awesome.
I could actually bring up on the screen if you wanted to see it.
That's even better. Thank you, Frank.
Let me just go grab that momentarily.
While Frank is doing that, I'll just mention, I believe he's going to bring up the one-page summary, and we have a one-page summary for each project. That'll be on the ballot, and voters can access that when they go to vote.
Can you send those one-page summaries around to all of us?
We sure could.
Okay, well, so while Frank pulls that up, so in your list, I think you had like 8 to 9 projects that you're currently working on. How did you select those 8 to 9?
They were ideas that came forth from the initial brainstorming project. And they're ideas that folks within their action teams put through. We have a rubric that just kind of touches on several different points. And if an idea doesn't make it through the rubric, then it just dies. That's kind of it. So they went through all of those, and then the projects that were left over are the projects that folks just kind of rallied behind and started researching and touching base with all the different folks within the city, to bring forth, if we were to do this, what would be the cost? How would this happen? Would it even work? Is it even possible? And so it came from the brainstorming sessions and any ideas that came forth that went through that rubric and made it.
So then the process would be Hartford residents would submit ideas to your board, or Hartford residents met first, and then through that process and speaking in subcommittees and groups, those were the ones those ideas, 8 to 9 projects, made it.
The ideas were brought through, I think we had like 3 different brainstorming sessions across the city. And we put all of those ideas together, broke it up, whether it was kind of like something educational or something that was transportation related. We had like a whole bunch of different topics. And then folks jumped on those action teams and then just started working those ideas through to see if they'd be viable. And if they made it to the viability stage, then folks rallied around them and got down to doing the hard work to bring the proposals to life.
Is there a process that you have, and Frank, you can jump in whenever you have the clip. Oh, that's it. Okay, go ahead. Share with us what that is.
Yeah, so this is the PDF, the document for the one-page summary. And as Christina said, there's one of these for each project, and I've got them all teed up so we can go through if you'd like. This is what people will see when they link from the website, either on their mobile phone or their desktop computer, with the pictures, Spanish and English descriptions, the costs, the locations, who benefits, and then a description, overall description of the project.
Are those like indoor playgrounds?
Well, they can be indoor or outdoor. They're actually the folks at the library put us in touch with the company that provides these. They're intended to be playful learning experiences. So there's always a learning, goal in engaging with the various devices that they have. And the library was planning to put these in 2 different locations, the Upper Albany branch and the Campfield branch. And then because of where we are today, we're not sure what building spaces are going to be able to use, what circumstances, the library is prepared to do this, implemented either outdoors or indoors. Obviously, the equipment that would be purchased would be dependent upon its application.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have some more questions.
Go
How
ahead.
do you, in the 4 years that you've been doing this, how do you diversify where you're gonna do the different projects so that it's not always in the same neighborhoods?
Projects, so the action team that I had served on, they were really thoughtful and considerate, because some of the ideas that came to light, I think, may have only touched a couple of neighborhoods. And Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the rubric has a minimum neighborhood requirement, I feel like. And so as we were working through them, we wanted to be sure as many neighborhoods as possible could benefit, from what the project is.
Yeah, if I may add, we really don't try to control that. I mean, this is really a community-driven process. So the ideas come from residents, and they go through this process that Christine is describing to choose which ones actually make it onto the ballot. So each year the mix is a little different in terms of what part of the city is represented. This year there's actually there's a little more of a leaning towards the north end. I think a couple of years ago there was a little bit more of a leaning towards the south end, and then there are some projects that that cover multiple neighborhoods or even are citywide. But honestly, we don't try to control that. It's really what the participants decide and what they suggest and which ideas can come to fruition.
Okay. Another question that I have. There are some nonprofits that are in reference to some of the projects that you mentioned, like gardening and the tree planting. I'll use those 2 as examples. But there are some nonprofits that do this work as we speak. And so why would this be any different than what they're doing?
Well, I'm not sure what the other nonprofits are that are out there doing that. I've worked a great deal with Knox, and I believe that the city does as well. And so this year, at least, if the project wins, we are revitalizing, a set of plots that have already kind of gotten lost and such. So it would be great to be able to bring that resource back to life. Also, it was the particular plot and location that this group of librarian women they checked out all the plots, they checked out all the different options where Knox thought it would be feasible to place, these plots. And it seems that this one really struck them and sang to them, and that's the one that they did the work around. But I mean, it can be project driven. Like I said, it really tends to come from the community for the most part.
Okay, so
if I might add again, I'm sorry to jump in, but we really encourage collaboration. And as Christina said before, in the process of working through all the project ideas that are suggested, one thing that happens is that the participants talk with people around the city and find out, is this already being done? We don't want to encourage the reinventing the wheel, but we really encourage collaboration. The project that's on the ballot for a couple of weeks from now with Knox on the Liberian ladies is a great example of collaboration. The Keeney Park Fitness Trail is a collaboration between a group of high school students and Herb Virgo and the Keeney Park Sustainability Project. The U Media Project it's in collaboration. It was a group of high school students working with the library and library staff. So we really try to encourage collaboration and discourage reinventing the wheel.
How do you track or quantify the outcome? And I say that because sometimes we see certain projects that occur and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, in terms of lack of capacity, they fall to a state of disarray.
That's one of the things that we've tried to the best of our ability, and I mean, things still happen, but it's one of the things that we've tried to kind of make into the project idea, I believe. And again, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the things on the rubric is something that can last or be sustained for about, was it 10 years, I believe, Richard?
That's right. A lifetime of at least 10 years, right?
Right. So, I mean, we try not to be wasteful with the funds that, we're given the opportunity to use to improve the city. And there was another point I was going to make that, and I also believe that when we touch base with the different folks within the city, being able to figure out, what's coming up, can it be done? Is it something that you have, the bandwidth to be able to take care of and do? I believe for the most part, again, things still happen that's not within our control. But I believe that also helps make sure that those funds are going to a project that's not just going to be done and then left.
How would you answer the question of certain groups that are already included as part of a city budget? In this case, I'm thinking about the Hartford Public Library, receiving additional funds for things like laptops is something that you mentioned. So the question has to do with receiving additional funds, whereas other groups might.
Before you answer that, Christina, let me just say that we are beyond our allotted time. So if there's some more questions after this, would you mind following up with Richard or Christina by mail?
Absolutely,
Okay, great.
will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Christina. You want to answer our last question?
So the laptop project was something, I remember who the project lead on that was, and pretty much the funds were directly sent to just buy, the laptops. And the best place for distribution and for folks to be able to, use that resource is the library. I mean, they already go there for other things, and we found that to be the best place for those things to live and to be utilized by students.
Thank you, Christina. I love your presentation. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
And Richard, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I apologize because of the pandemic that we've been in, that we had to keep postponing until now. But I believe everybody understands the dilemma that we're all in. But thank you very much for your presentation. And if any of the council person wish to follow up with Richard and Christina with their questions, please do so. So I will be officially.
Madam Chair, one quick question.
Okay, John, one quick question.
There were other people at this meeting who never got introduced.
Oh.
I don't know who's Christine Caruso and who's Jared Chase.
Jerry.
Jerry Johnson.
There's a couple of call-in people.
Naomi. I don't know. Sorry, I'm not looking at my footage. So who are they?
Naomi. Hartford Azides.
Would you introduce yourselves again for everybody, please? I apologize.
Yes, hi, my name is Naomi.
And are you with Hartford Azides, Naomi, or are you just visiting with us tonight?
No, I am with Hartford Azides.
Oh, okay. One of the board members?
Yes, I am.
Oh, well, thank you so very much. Good job. Who else do we have with us?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Caruso. I'm also a board member on Hartford Decides.
Thank you, Christina. Christine, I'm sorry. Richard, who else do we have with us?
I'm Jerry Chase. I'm a board member of Hartford Decides and neighbors with Frank Setner, who's also on this call on Capitol Avenue.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for this great presentation. Do we have anybody else we did not introduce?
Earlier, we had Andre Santiago, but he had to leave.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What about caller number 1 or caller number 2 or 4? Any callers on?
Well, one of those is me, Councilman Mictum, so I don't know if that's what you mean.
Well, thank you very much, Councilman. And I'm not sure who caller number 2 is.
George, are you with us?
I tried to dial in with my
Frank. Okay.
Okay. Well, all from Hartford Azides, thank you so very much for a great presentation. I really appreciate it. I'm educated. I'm educated. So officially, would like to end our council meeting. It's about 6:49. Thank you all council person for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.